Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be learning how to create a solar system in Illustrator. So the first thing we're going to do is just go to File, New, or click here, New, once you have Illustrator open. And we're going to go ahead and choose a print document today. We'll use, let's go ahead and do letter, and we'll change it to this orientation so that it's landscape instead of portrait. And CMYK color is fine, since we're going to be printing this. Alright, first thing I want to do, I'm going to name this layer background, and I'm going to create a black background for space, and I can just switch these right here. And then I'm going to click and drag a rectangle around this area, and I'll lock it. So now we have our black background. Let me go ahead and create a new layer now, and we're going to call this our stars, or star field. We'll just put stars. And we're going to create something called a scatter brush. So right now, when you get a paintbrush out, let me switch these to two bright colors. You have just kind of a normal line. But if you go over here to your brushes panel, which you can also access from window brushes, you'll see that there's a other variety of things that you can do to your brushes as well, like borders and kind of paint brushy type effects. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our own. It's called a scatter brush. And we're going to use a star as our starting point, and then we're going to make a whole bunch of them just by painting. So to start off, we're going to switch to an ellipse tool. Let's go ahead and give this a white fill and no stroke, just like that. And you're going to hold down Shift while you're creating this, and we're going to make it really small. In fact, I'm going to even go smaller than that. Let's say 5 points by 5 points about. So it'll look approximately like that. Doesn't have to be exact, but so you can see from far away it's going to be very, very tiny. Alright, so that doesn't really look much like a star, so what we could do is add a little effect to it to make some changes to it. And up here at the top, if I go to Effect and I go to Distort, use this one, don't use the ones down here, but Distort and Transform, I'm going to use Pucker and Bloat. I'm going to send it down to about negative, I think 50% or so. No, let's go a little further. Maybe negative 100% or close to it. Okay. And there you go. That looks kind of like a star. So from far off, we got a nice little star effect right there. Alright, so we're going to make this into a scatter brush, and here's what we need to do. You got to select this star using the regular selection tool. Make sure it's got a little circle around it. And then in our brushes panel, we're going to click on the New, and we're going to choose a scatter brush. We're going to change the settings to random, except for the rotation. I'll keep that fixed. And for the size, I want to go maybe something that's about a quarter of that size. I don't really want to go any bigger, so this is the smallest and this is the biggest that it could be. For spacing, I'm going to have some that are super close together and some that are much farther apart, so a huge range there. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing with the scatter, and that might be a little bit too much, so let me just kind of see how that plays out. Let's go ahead and use a paintbrush now, and with that brush selected, you can see it's right here. I should have named it Star, but I forgot to. That's what it looks like. Ooh, that's actually really good. I think I'm about done. I can draw a couple more times if I want to, but yeah, there's our star field. Alright, and you can, if you want to like choose different colors and stuff, and like maybe make a couple of different ones that are slightly different, that's fine. Colorization, I'm not going to play with that, but alright, so now the next thing we're going to do is let's go back to our layers, and let's go ahead and lock that layer and create a new one, and we'll call this one Planets. And on our planets layer, I'm going to go ahead and just start off with an ellipse, holding down Shift to make that perfectly circular. And we're going to go ahead and create a gradient on this one. So I need to get my gradients panel out, Window, Gradient, and you might have it open already over here. But to use the gradient tool, we're going to select this button right here, click on our object. Oh, it's not working. I think I need to give it a fill first. Let me just do that real quick. Okay, now I'm going to click on the object. There we go. And you should be able to get something that looks like that. Now, having a linear gradient doesn't really look like a planet at all, so we need to switch this to radial over here. And if these options aren't showing you, remember you can always click on these two little things and it'll give you more options. So we switch to radial, and you can drag this thing and you can kind of see how it kind of gives it this nice little kind of looks like more like a planet. You can adjust the size of this and etc. And the colors right now are kind of boring, so let's just change them up a little. I'm going to go ahead and do instead of we'll go ahead and keep that to black. Let's go ahead and add a stop right here, and let's choose, I don't know, kind of a darkish blue. And then over here, let's add kind of a lightish blue. And if you just double click on those, you can see that it adds the color. And if I double click down here, it'll allow me to add another color. I don't want to do that. Oops. So I double click on this one, and you'll notice I don't see any colors. So if you switch to this, you can kind of pick from the palette. I want to choose a light color. Let me try something a little bit darker for that one, like that. And it's weird. I don't really know why it looks kind of weird like that. I think it's because we're using CMYK instead of RGB. So I might actually advise you guys to not do that. I'm going to change the document setup. Sorry, I'm going to change the document color mode to RGB instead. Let's see if that fixes it. That's better, but now our background looks weird. Anyway, nothing to worry about. Okay, so yeah, that's definitely better. We're going to use RGB instead. So there's my first planet. Let's go ahead and create a second one. And keep in mind that your light source, wherever the light spot is, imagine that's where the sun is. Keep that consistent throughout. So if I put a planet right here, maybe my light source is kind of over here. So I want to kind of change the way this gradient is pointed. So maybe I'll push this one up here. And for this one, I will double click on this one to give it another light color. Let's do like a pink. Let's change this one to something in the middle, maybe like a darker red. And then I'll change this one to black. Well, there it already is black. So there we go. So that's how you're going to create some planets. You don't want to have a stroke on them. This one has a white stroke. Let me just get rid of that. And I'll show you guys later on how to add some effects to these to make them a little distorted and just look like they have some texture. So, all right, that's it. Have fun.